Next section is how to donate and acquire property from the land banks. So we already saw the slide, I'll skip over that one. So this, we're going to go first, and I think South Berlin's going to go after, right? Or I think that's how it's structured. Anyway, so first slide here talks about eligible acquirers. We are looking for individuals who are looking to acquire property for their personal use, or who want to acquire side lots. So a piece of property is adjacent to a property you own and occupy. That we may get as a piece of vacant land, we can convey it to you. I will mention before I get into this that when we convey property out, again, the property is going to, in most cases, belong to the person who acquires it. You will take title to that property, it will no longer belong to us. We're looking for nonprofit and for-profit developers. We are looking to convey property to local governments and governmental bodies. We're also looking for nonprofit, community, and faith-based organizations who may have community strategies around gardens, urban agriculture, other types of projects. This is not an all-inclusive list. There may be somebody we didn't put on this list. If there's somebody who is in this room who says, "Hey, I'm not one of those," that's fine. Come and see us. We'll put you on the list, and you're okay. The basic point is we work with anybody who wants to acquire the property. But these are the people we're focused on mostly right now. In terms of our expectations, we want to see that the proposed end use aligns with our mission. So critically what that means is that the property can be put back into productive use soon. We don't want to see people take land and then sit on it. That defeats the purpose of having it conveyed to you. So we're not looking to have you basically acquire property as a way of rounding out an investment portfolio and then just sit on it for a while. That's not going to be the way we want to work. We want to make sure the end use aligns with local interests and needs, so that could be both in terms of from a planning perspective, but also there's a lot of interest in trying to make sure that properties are being put back into use for homeownership in one area, or rental in an area, or aligning with transjoint development, or whatever those local interests are. So you'll see when we get into the application, we actually ask you in your application for property, have you consulted with local interests, and to tell us who those local interests are. We know in the city of Chicago that most people, when they're doing projects, the first person they talk to is the alderman. There are lots of other groups in the city of Chicago we'd like to see you consulting with that include community-based organizations, local institutions. We want to know that you actually have been taking time to be thoughtful about how you connect to the community. Capacity to close, rehab, and occupy in a timely fashion is very important for us. We are not, by ordinance, able to convey property to folks that have existing tax delinquencies or outstanding code violations on other properties. And if you are coming to us and you've had a past history of having had tax delinquencies, we may have a challenge because the ordinance does not want to see us conveying property to people who have not paid their taxes historically. Lastly, is the buyer has to be able to pay the closing costs, pay our costs at closing. So the costs that we incur to acquire, hold, and convey. We are exploring ways of converting some of the cash costs into soft second, deed restrictions that go with the property, so that you're not having to exchange cash. But the expectation is, we incur costs on behalf of the public and the taxpayer. We want to get those dollars back. So we are not going to be giving, we're not going to go out and buy a piece of property or acquire a piece of property and hold it for a long time and give it to you for free. That kind of defeats the purpose and also will put us out of business. We put together a list of common questions that we hear. So first one, how can I see and research the properties? We're going to be acquiring property on a rolling basis. You'll see when we get into the discussion on what we've already acquired or what we're going to acquire. It's mostly smaller single-family homes, kind of similar to what they've done in South Suburban. But we're going to be expanding the inventory of properties that we acquire and the types of property. And all of that is going to go up onto our website through a property inventory tracking system. So within, by the end of this month, by the end of August as our target, you'll be able to go on that website, see each property, see the cost that we've incurred on the date in which you're looking at it. There'll be information in terms of the context of the surrounding community. A whole bunch of information will be available. It will be available up until the point that the property is closed to somebody else or goes under contract to somebody else, at which point that property will come off. So there'll never be a question of trying to figure out what does the land bank have, because it'll be on that website. Is the property free? No, we've already covered that one. Can the land bank clear taxes and liens on property or that already owned? No. If you acquire a property that has tax liens or other types of liens on it, we don't have the ability to abate those for you. We can abate property before you, depending on how we acquire. We can abate those taxes or clear liens depending on how it's acquired before you acquire. So it's very important that you speak to us and engage us before you go out and acquire your property. And if you're currently holding property that has those issues, maybe one of the things you can do is look to try to convey it to somebody else, utilize the land bank that way. But of course, you're not going to be able to get the benefit there. Leasing of land or property. We do have the ability to lease property, and as I said, we would prefer to convey the title directly to you, but in some situations it makes more sense for us to hold the land and then lease it. So we were doing those on a case-by-case basis to make sure they align with our policies and our procedures as well as our budget mission. Deed restrictions, I've already talked about, we want to convey the property to you without deed restrictions, which I think is an important thing to know. And then we talked about, do we have the ability to get approval and execute transactions? The approval for all transactions the land bank is involved with, not, barring the engagement of local municipal authorities who have to have some oversight on that stuff as well. But as far as our role in those deals, those are through me and through our board, and that's pretty much it. So it's a very simple process for people who are looking to go about acquiring property. So in terms of our procedures, we have a pre-qualification form. It's actually included in your packets today. It's also on our website. You will fill it out, submit it to us. We go through and review it. We'll follow up and collect additional information to make sure that the person acquiring is actually qualified, meaning you have the capacity to close, you've done the due diligence with your community partners, you actually have a strategy that makes sense in line with what we're trying to accomplish. You can visit our website to identify property, or you can come in with property you've already identified. We will, assuming we can reach an agreement, we'll put together a conveyance agreement. It's essentially a purchase contract that sets the standard for how we're conveying the property to you. We're going to be asking for a deposit. I think the deposit is $5. What is the deposit we put in there? It's a very modest deposit that we put in there just to make sure that you're actually going to move to close. And then the property is conveyed via quick claim and as is. And again, as I noted earlier, we'll let you know what the condition is as much as we know about it. So you'll be getting a lot of information about the property. So there you go. Inspection reports, other due diligence. We'll make sure we get that to you. We want to transfer the property as quickly as we can. So we want to try to move as fast as we can. We'd like to be moving faster than we currently are, but that just is a part of getting ourselves up and running. You'll know the accrued expenses. What happens if somebody wants, if more than one party wants the property? Generally speaking, we're going to convey the property by auction to the highest bidder if there's competition for a specific property. But we're also going to be looking at what is the mission of the land bank trying to accomplish. And so if there is a mission priority that trumps someone else, and if that party has come in earlier than the person who wants to acquire it, then we will most likely try to hold down and see if that person with the more mission-oriented perspective can close on the property. But if it's a situation where two parties have come together at the same time, they both want the property, it's going to be done by auction to the highest bidder and keep it clear and clean that way. And then the last note I put up here is that we do have the ability to structure unique conveyances. So there may be things that we want to try to accomplish that we haven't already thought of or we haven't started to put together the framework to accomplish. We have the ability to draft unique agreements as we need to. And that's, I think, an important piece. We're trying not to be super cookie cutter. In terms of conveying property to us, again, the people who could consider donating or conveying property to us, individuals, nonprofit, for-profit firms, local governments and governmental bodies wishing for us to have property held on their behalf, REO properties within bank or the Fannie and Freddie inventories, and then others. We've had investors who contacted us, people who acquired property, the market tanked, they're now stuck with property they can't develop. We're trying to figure out how to accommodate as many of those different requests as we can, but again, we have to know the property can be redeveloped. We can't have you, giving us 100 vacant lots or, a building that's got, some kind of huge environmental issue that you want to just, dump on us. That's not going to happen. So it requires us figuring out how we can reposition that property before we can start to accept it. Property that's being conveyed can have unpaid or delinquent taxes, liens, code violations, or other encumbrances. I will caution you that in some cases, some of the properties we're currently trying to close, we're not able to close those properties because of code violations. That gets back to Brent's point about trying to work with the local municipal authorities to get some waivers on some of that stuff. But obviously we can take stuff that has some of the unpaid delinquent taxes or other liens. We're going to prioritize our acquisitions with the ability to repurpose and dispose in a reasonable time frame. So again, we're not holding stuff long term. Property that is totally obsolete, the building has been completely destroyed, the land is really not able to be redeveloped. We're going to be looking at deconstruction or demolition, but we may request cash donations to offset. So we have had a conversation going on with one of the GSEs about donating about 100 properties to us, where we anticipate that the cost of the land bank would be over $1.5 million. We're not going to take those properties from them because they're legally obligated to pay the demolition costs. If they don't want to pay the demolition costs, then that's going to be their problem. So I want people to understand that, we are not the dumping ground for all the bad property and bad decisions. We have to operate within a sort of a market context of what other people. And then conditions under which we'll accept or negotiate on a case-by-case basis, because every property is different. So again, these are going to be unique structures and arrangements in most cases. The considerations that we look at when we're acquiring properties of potential end use, the alignment between its anticipated end use and local plans and needs, the ability to clear title. In some cases, we just can't clear the title, it's just too difficult, so we can't take the property through the land bank. And then an anticipated cost for us to hold the property and convey it out to future use. So, pretty basic stuff there, I think. Again, the procedures we have in the land bank are basically fill out the pre-qualification form. If you have a piece of property you'd like to donate, fill out the form and tell us a little bit of information about the property. So, key things we want to know is what are the legal encumbrances on that property. We've had people who come to us and said, I have a property I'd like to donate, and we ask them, well, does it have liens? Are there taxes on it? What's going on the property? I don't know. We are not a property research organization. If it's your property, take the time. We're going to teach you today some of the tools that we're using. Take the time to find out before you come to us, to find out what's going on with that piece of property. Because we don't have the resources to go through a portfolio of vacant lots or single-family homes that you acquired at some point and try to tell you what the issues are. But that's the form. It's a very simple. The forms we have are pretty short. They're like 4 pages each, so they're relatively simple forms. Again, we'll review those and follow up with you, and then we'll prepare a conveyance agreement which will allow us to accept and try to move to schedule closing as quickly as we can. Okay. Other types of properties we won't accept? Not really. Every property is open for acceptance. It depends on what the conditions are. Are we going to accept all properties? No. Some properties we're going to turn back and say we can't accept those. I'm sorry, we have no ability to accept those. Will we accept portfolios? Absolutely. If you have a portfolio of property, if you assemble properties that we're going to use and now you can't use them, that's a conversation to have with us, because maybe we can help to hold those properties for future redevelopment. We are taking properties that we'll accept through foreclosure, abandonment, forfeiture, no cash bid, and other means. So we're going to explore every strategy that's useful for us and is available to us to acquire property where it makes sense. So let's talk about how that works. And Brent's going to talk more about that as far as some of the legal issues that we encounter. Next steps: review our land transactions policy, review the pre-qualification forms for donors and for acquirers. Those are on our website and also in the land and the resource guide. That's our address and how to get in touch with us. Okay.
This is another example where I can just say what he said. The process is very similar. We're looking for the same types of properties and things. What I would just say, a couple things. On the acquisition side, so if you're bringing properties to us, or if you're interested in what kind of properties we look at, we get properties from all kinds of sources. So we get properties from banks, REOs, from individuals, other nonprofits, for-profit folks. There's just a lot of different places we can get something from. So we have complete flexibility there. On the disposition side, same thing. We don't have a lot of set parameters. What we're going to do is look at every project on a case-by-case basis. So if that requires underwriting of the project, I think what the county has as far as a pre-qualification form, we don't have that. If you want to use that for us, that's fine, that's perfect. We just need to know, kind of capacity, what their plan is, so we can really review it. I've got underwriting and development background, so it's pretty easy for us to look at projects and give you an assessment fairly quickly. Is this something that makes sense economically? Is it something that the land bank can be involved in? So what I would encourage is just, kind of submit something. If it's coming to me, you can use the county's form. You can give me a very brief kind of outline of what you're trying to do and what the property is, and we can kind of underwrite it from there. We'll obviously ask you if we need more information, but it's very case by case. One of the things we've learned about in doing this for the short time we've been doing it is everything's different. All these transactions are different. all the municipalities are different, so there's just a lot of different kind of wheels moving at the same time, and so we're trying to be mindful of that and look at everything kind of on a case-by-case basis. When we acquire something, it's kind of the same calculation. We want to be able to convey it in a way that we pay for the expenses, at least that we have into it, but we also want to convey it so that the end user is getting it at an attractive enough price so they can do something. So if it's a developer, it's got to be cheap enough so you can do what you need to do and then sell it or rent it and make what you need to make out of it. So, keep in mind, I guess, from the economic standpoint, like Brian said, we're not a dumping ground. We don't have those kind of finances. But we do have enough and enough other kind of players and partners that we can put together pretty big transactions. But we need your help and we need you guys to come forward with those. And I would just say, Brent reminded me of something we will look at. Brownfields, so contaminated properties, is not something we will just say no to. We will look at it and see if there's a way to work it out and figure out if it makes sense. We have a very large 13-acre parcel we're working on right now that may be interesting to some of you here. But that's brownfield site, so we're kind of working through those issues and see what we can and can't do. But that's just an example of we'll look at basically everything, and we're happy to have that conversation and then see if it makes sense. So that's kind of all I want to say about acquisition. Do we do questions now? Okay, questions.